Many thanks for staying with us on Good Morning Abuja. In case you've just joined us, you've missed a little, but we have another very interesting conversation that we are delving into right now with Fidelis Mba, who is also a journalist on the state of the nation. Welcome on the program.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So the recent the hive now is on the recent ban lift on Twitter. What's your take on that? What effect do you think it had, the ban had on Nigerians? And now that it's been lifted, what prospects do you see?
Well, in the first place, I don't think it was a smart decision to ban Twitter because I feel government would have gone around it in such a way that in a more diplomatic manner, maybe have a conversation with Twitter on trying to make certain adjustments to how they allow people, more like maybe regulating certain words that are being used, because all around the world there are some words you can't easily use, and then some social media companies can as well try to keep away those words, but not like trying to silence people, so to speak. So that ban was actually a dent on our reputation, because around the world it would be judged that government was trying to silence opposition, that government was trying to be authoritarian, that government was not allowing free speech.
Okay.
But now that the ban has been lifted, I think I would say kudos to government, because that would also more like erase certain impressions people have about the government, and also businesses are going to thrive, because I think projections by some economists say Nigerians lost about 500 billion within that 7 months. So right now, some of the businesses are going to pick up, because there were businesses that relied mostly on Twitter to be able to drive their revenue and all that, but they had to shut down. And now with Twitter active again, businesses are going to more like thrive again. And then in terms of like free speech, people will be allowed to express themselves, and it wouldn't be like the government is trying to silence anybody. So I feel it's a win-win thing for government. Now they've compelled Twitter to set up an office, to start paying taxes, and also to be more corporate in their activities. So I think that's a big plus on government side. But again, for the populace, especially ahead of elections, people rely so much on social media, not just for information, to also be able to express their mind. So I feel this is a good development.
Okay. Talking about expressing people's minds, there are people that they just using Twitter and other social medias, just say things that could be of greater harm to the nation. How do we ensure that not everything that anyone thinks of just goes and then everybody is able to see it and create more chaos?
Yeah, more like Facebook, for instance. There are certain things that if you post, they'll flag the post and bring it down. I think this is like part of the discussions the government team had with the Twitter team.
Okay.
So we're expecting a situation not silencing people, but trying to ensure that certain statements, especially inciting comments, are not online for, But I mean, if you just like maybe venting your frustration on government, or maybe commenting about the situation in the country, that's fine. But where you start using disinformation to actually cause chaos, like we had cases in recent months where people just came up with fake videos, fake pictures all over the media. So some platforms are already like working on that, bringing it down. They'll flag it up. Even the president's tweet, which actually resulted in this Twitter, problem, was because they felt the statement, that statement or that particular tweet did not conform with their regulations. So we're going to see a couple of changes, and I expect that that going forward, people will be more responsible in how they tweet, in how they post on other platforms, be it Instagram, be it Facebook or Pinterest or even Snapchat. So going forward, let's see how it goes, especially ahead of elections, because right now there's going to be more like we're going to experience more of fake news, people just trying to make comments to rubbish their opponents or the opposition trying to say something to incite the public. So we're going to see a lot of that, but I hope that Twitter will be able to corporately try to manage that, because that's going to be a tough one.
Okay. So as a journalist, do you think there are rights in this country that protect journalists?
Well, over the years, let me even talk about the civilian era. We've had cases where, yes, some of our colleagues, their freedom were breached, which is like, freedom of expression, and also when they write, even when government sometimes feel that, oh, we feel this information is either not correct, or how did you get in this information? I've been in that situation before, where I did a report, and I was hounded by security people because they wanted me, not that they were disputing that report, but because they felt they needed me to provide my source, which is actually against the ethics of the profession. So we had cases like that. But again, we also had cases where some of our colleagues go overboard in trying to fabricate stories, in trying to come up with information that is not correct. People just sitting somewhere having a chat, and then the next day, especially with newspapers, you see headlines. Because to some extent, I feel broadcast outfits are a bit more responsible, because, for broadcast, you need the person's voice, either a video. So there's actually an evidence to back up what you're claiming, unlike a newspaper where you can attribute quotes. Some can even generate quotes that doesn't exist.
And put a name to it.
Yeah, so in those cases, some of us, like I've had to talk to colleagues and I say, look, try to do your job professionally, so that when your rights are breached, then some of us will know how to back you, support you, or try to bring the case up with the authorities. So for this thing for government, especially against the journalists, we've had cases where some arrests are just carried on because you did a story, which not just this government, previous government with this thing. But I feel like the Freedom of Information Act, is still not being properly implemented, because you write to government agencies or ask government for response about particular issues when you're working on a story. Even when they're going to respond, it takes like forever. And most times they will ignore, especially like if you write to the military asking for information. I bet you might wait for 2 decades. It will never. So it's supposed to be something that government is supposed to be more transparent, which is when you need a particular document, they should be able to avail you those documents, except if there's like very top secret documents, which around the world, government wouldn't want to give you security files. But if it's something that's supposed to be of public interest, you should be able to oblige journalists that information. But I don't think that has really happened right from when it was passed up to this present day.
Okay. So it is the pre-electioneering year, and a lot of activities are going to take place this year because of elections next year. And we're going to find media personnel at the forefront reporting, and especially during collation and election time like that. So how do you think, because we've seen in a lot of cases where, because you're reporting election, you're giving election results and what have you, you're reporting election results, harm has come to a lot of media people. How do you think they can be further protected, especially at this time?
First of all, I would rather suggest that our colleagues abide by INEC regulations, because we've seen where colleagues, even if they're not reporting, on their Twitter handle or their Facebook, they're posting results, which is actually not supposed to be. So first of all, let's clean our own table before we start portioning blames. So apart from that, when you do that and it puts you in harm's way, it's difficult to defend you. But again, I think journalists need to collaborate more with INEC in terms of and the Nigeria police in terms of providing a protection, more like security for journalists, because you have cases where you go to an opposition area, for instance, and they feel that, oh, you've been sent by government as a spy, you've been sent by government to come and report things that are not happening, or that you're going to change your narrative. So it exposes you, even when you see rigging. Over the years, I've gone to cover elections, and you see the opposition thumb printing, not just opposition, even the ruling party thumb printing. But again, when you capture that, it becomes a very big. Sometimes if you're using a camera, it gets smashed. Sometimes that's where you hear journalists are battered, they're attacked.
They would sit down and they're doing that, and you have a camera.
Yes. So it's for our journalists to be properly trained as well, to understand where your life is more important than the story, because you always be told that, look, there's cases where, as much as you want to report, you think about safety first. I do training for journalists, and I try to also share my experiences. I've covered stories across the world, so I try to tell them what to do during like election period. So it's for us to, first of all, be professional, and then always make sure that you take security measures before you go to such areas. And then it's not all stories that you must cover, especially if you know this particular area. If they see a visitor, they're going to kill the person or they're going to attack you. Or maybe, like now, if you're from a particular state with a governor who's seeking re-election, and you're from his village, and you go to the opposition area to go and cover, definitely they'll put an eye on you, especially if they know your background. So I would rather that you tell your editor or whoever is deploying you to be able to, like, okay, look, I won't go there for security reasons. But in some cases, people put down these rules, they just ignore and say, okay, I'm a journalist, and you just go. And you see cases also where security people will tell you, don't cross this particular line, don't do this. I say, oh, I'm a journalist, do you know who I am? You know, I have to, I need to report
you feel
my
you
story.
have super immunity.
So to some extent, sometimes if you sense insecurity, you should be able to take precaution so that you don't fall into trouble.
Thank you so much for your thoughts, Mr. Fidelis Umba. Thank you for coming on the program. This is the much we can take on this segment.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Viewers, you've heard it all from Mr. Fidelis Umba. Good Morning Abuja continues after this timeout. Do stay with us.